Good evening, everyone. Badram Karanebihi Shunyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Rejatraha Stirai Rangair Tushvam Sastanubihi Veshema Devahitai Yadayuhu Swastinaha Indro Vrudrashtavaha Swastinaha Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinaha Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Brihaspati Daratu Yo Antaha Pravishya Mamavacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjeevayati Akila Shaktidara Swadamna Anyamshta Hasta Charana Shravanatvagarin Prana Namo Bhagavate Purushaya Tuvyam Lasatu Srimad Ananda Tirtendurano Hrudambare Yadvajas Chandrika Swanta Santapam Vinikrantati Atavakya Pramanajnan Pranamya Shirasa Gurun Vyakarishye Yatabotam Vishnu Tattva Vinirnayam. Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is happy and safe and well. This fantastic evening every Sunday has been going on since the 21st of March. So it's amazing. It's quite amazing that we have remained consistent and we've all made an effort to assemble on a Sunday evening despite our other commitments and spend an hour and a half thinking about things that is outside of a comfort zone, thinking outside the box, outside our comfort zones, and to contemplate there must be something bigger than the coronavirus and everything else that's going around us. So despite the lockdown, I think these sessions are giving us a great positive distraction. I certainly find it very, very useful and inspiring to join all of you and share some of my thoughts and also exchange views across the pond. We have friends from US, we have colleagues and friends from India, and across the length and breadth of the UK who are phoning in and joining us for this session. So just to give you, let's do what's called a Simhavalokana Nyaya. So in Sanskrit, in Vedic philosophy, there is something called Simhavalokana Nyaya. Simhavalokana Nyaya means when a lion is walking through the forest and in the jungle, and once it's made its hunt or once it's going through the forest, what it does is it glances back and looks at all the creatures that are looking at it. It glances back, and that's a kind of analogy that is given in Vedic scriptures called Simhavalokana Nyaya, which means let's turn back and then try and summarize what we have been discussing over the past 4 weeks on the journey of souls. Now, this journey of the souls is so complicated, is so intricate and so vast, and it's such a long journey that the soul makes, that I have to remind you, we haven't even yet opened the gates. We haven't opened the gates so that the soul can actually start its journey. We're still in the fundamental aspects of, before the soul embarks on this journey, what are all the things that it needs to know? What are the fundamentals? What are the foundations that it needs to know before it can make an informed, well-guided journey towards liberation? Yeah. So that is the ultimate aim for all of us who are assembled here. So the key question when it comes to that is, yes, over the last 3 weeks, we have discussed aspects about the soul. What is it? What is the size of the soul? Where is it present in the body? How does it get this ignorance and then it is going through this samsara? Where is the ignorance? What are the types of ignorance? And is the ignorance real? If so, who places the ignorance? So we kind of tackle these deep philosophical ideas that flourish in Vedic philosophy over the last 3 weeks. The next question that arises here is, are the souls making this journey alone? Are they making this journey alone themselves, or along the way they have guides and helpers who take them in the right direction? So that is another key question that the Vedic philosophers have tried to answer. So how do we try and find that answer? How do the divinities of the Vedic pantheon guide the journey of souls? Hopefully, over the next an hour and 15 minutes, I will be able to give you an insight. I'll be able to give you an insight because the study of Vedic pantheon, the Vedic Devatas, the Taratamya of Devatas is quite extensive. And I would urge that all of us make our dedicated reading. But the purpose of today's talk is to give you an idea of what it is about. So as Abhijit is in the second slide, now it all boils down to this, the pre-creation and the creation stage. And about 6 weeks ago, we spent a lot of time talking about creation. We had 2 sessions on creation, the meaning of creation, the modes of creation, how does the matter come in, how does the souls come in, and so on. So that becomes reasonably important in our understanding of what is the role of the Devatas. So we discussed the Nasadiya Sukta of Rigved, where it says, Ani davatam swadaya tadekam tasma dhanyana parakinchanasa tama asi tamasa gudamagare apare apraketam salilam sarvama idam. Yeah. So the Nasadiya Sukta is giving us that brilliant explanation of what was it there before the Big Bang. What was there in the Big Bang? Before that, there was this point of singularity, and this point of singularity was covered by darkness, and there was this guy who was sitting there, and the first line there, Anid avatam swadaya tadekam. Anid avatam. Avatam means, vatam means air. Avatam means airless. So there was this guy who was breathing windlessly. He was sitting there in the waters of the Pralaya. Salilam. Salilam means it is the cosmic waters. So cosmic waters is an interesting concept. What it actually means is this subtle matter. So this Brahman is sitting on this subtle matter called as the ocean, Salilam, Sarvamaidam. Yeah. The same spirit is also captured by Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in 4th Adhyaya. It says, Salilam eko drashta bhavati. Eko drashta advaito bhavati. Yeah. So it is saying Salila. So Salila means that cosmic water. Eko, one. Drashta, he is seeing. Advaito bhavati. Advaito bhavati means, we'll come to that word a little bit later. So Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is also capturing that situation before creation. Then the Chandogya Upanishad, this is a very famous verse which has caught attention of very many acharyas and philosophers of Vedas. Sadeva somya idamagra asid ekam eva advitiyam. Okay. That word, ekam eva advitiyam. 3 words. And those 3 words, believe me, has resulted in volumes and volumes of writings by Shankara, Ramanuja, and Madhva, and others who have followed them. A lot of philosophical discussion has happened. Now, in my question mark on the right, I've asked the question, what is this Ekam Eva Advitiyam? So, the Nasadiya Sukta is saying, before creation, there was this one being who was there, sitting alone. And then Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is also saying the same thing. And the Chandogya Upanishad, if you look at the words very carefully, it says, Sad Eva Somya Idam Agre. Agre means before creation. Asid, he was there. And how is he being described? He is being described as Ekam Eva Advitiyam. Now, the question is, it says one only. Does that mean that the one only exists and nobody else exists in the universe? Is it just that one sentient being that always has existed, will always exist, and has always existed? That is the one question. This is the fundamental axiomatic theory of Advaita, taking this particular word from Chandogya Upanishad, Ekameva Advitiyam. One only and nobody else is real, is the concept that comes from this particular Vakya of Chandogya Upanishad. Ramanuja and Madhva, for example, will have a slightly different view. They will say, yes, we accept before creation there was only one being, but he was one only without a similar or a superior entity, and all else were inferior to him, and they were in a state of suspended animation along with the Mula Prakriti in his womb. So that is the Dvaita and the Vishishta Dvaita view there. So I'm bringing this concept so that you can think about it. Pre-creation, one being, but one being was there, but what Ekameva Advitiyam means is that one being was there. That does not mean only one being, but others who are similar to him or superior to him do not exist. Everything is below him, and they all existed in the suspended animation. The reason why I point that that may be the view of the Vedic rishis is, if you look at the Vedantasutra Upanishad, it says, na tat samashta abhi adhikashta drishyate. He says, na tat sama. Sama means similar. Adhikashta means superior. Drishyate means seen. So Shvetashvatra Upanishad is very clear. It is saying there is nothing that is similar or nothing that is higher than this entity which has been described or seen in the Vedas. So he is the highest being and everything else is below him. Now, yes, the creation now happened. So once the creation happened, all the jivas that were there in the suspended animation along with the Mula Prakriti then came into being, and we discussed an hour and a half about this. So akamayat bahusyam prajaye iti satapo atapyata satapastaptva idam sarvam asrujata yedidam kincha tat srishtva tadeva anupravishata tat anupravishya satya tyacha abhavat, and it gives you a clear way in which creation has produced. This one being thought, let me create, and he just looked at it and the creation started. And then he created many, and then he said, let me get inside all my creation so that I can give them reality, I can give them functioning power, and I can sustain them. And that is what Taittiriya Upanishad is telling us, what happened with creation. Chandogya Upanishad again is bringing the same concept. Tad aikshata bahusyam prajayeti tat tejo asrujata. Tat tejo aikshata bahusyam prajayeti tat tapo asrujata. These are fantastic mantras that describe how this creation came about with all the jivas. Now, the reason why I have put this is our study and understanding of the devatas, of all the divine beings besides the supreme, our understanding of the souls would all make sense only if we accept and understand that there is one Ekameva Advitiyam who is the supreme most, but below him are all these infinite sentient atomic beings that are going through the various phases of their lives. So once we get that concept, then it makes sense to talk about devatas, what are the other gods of the Vedic pantheon. So Abhijit, moving on to the next slide. So again, we discussed this, how this creation happened, and this is important for you to remember and recapitulate, because for our discussion of the devatas and the gods, I would refrain from using the word demigod. Somehow it doesn't go well in my thought process. Somehow demigods means they are inferior, or I just avoid demigods. I would say devatas. So for us to understand the devatas, understanding of this 24 tattvas is key. So we discussed that. We discussed about how there was Mula Prakriti before creation, and then how Mula Prakriti then starts mixing up. And Mula Prakriti has got Sattva, Rajas, and Tamogunas. That is, those material things that have the quality of Sattva, the quality of Rajas, and the quality of Tamas. And then this guy, the Brahman, says, Om Atataha, and the universe begins. And there is a mixing up of all these three gunas. The first material entity, the subtle matter that comes about is Mahat. Then comes Ahankara. Then there are three aspects of the Ahankara Tattva, Vaikarika, Tejasa, and Tamasa. And these three tattvas, Ahankara tattvas, then they differentiate into the whole of existence that we know, Pancha Tanmatras, Panchabhutas, Jnana Indriyas, Karma Indriyas, and Manas. All these things come from the three aspects of the Ahankara Tattva. Okay, so these 24 tattvas are the first part of creation. If you remember that Bhagavatam, the first 6 stages of creation, so that is called Prakrita Shishti. That Prakrita Shishti essentially contains 24 components. Now, the Brahmanda has still not come into being. So this is the primordial soup. Now you have to cook it. Somebody has to cook all this and bring this material universe into being. So these 24 are the primary components of the Brahmanda. and they mix up together and form the Brahmanda or the universe that we know at this point. Now, note there, I have put this verse, Gita verse 15:1, because this verse captures this idea. Of all that we have discussed so far about the 24 tattvas is summarized so beautifully by Krishna in the first verse of 15th chapter. And he says, Urdhva Moolam Adaha Shakam Ashwattam Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Paranani Yastam Veda Savedavit. So we could spend a lot of time talking about this, but I just want you to grasp the idea of Urdhvam. I put Krishna's photo there, but it could be, you could call him Vishnu, for example, or anybody, any other name. So this guy is the Mula. Okay, he is the source of creation. Now, Adaha Shakam. Shakam means branches. Okay, if you look at the way in which I have drawn the schema, they are all various branches. So the first branch, the trunk of this material universe is the Mahat Tattva. Then comes the Ahankara Tattva, and there are 3 sub-branches, Vaikarika, Tejas, and Tamasa. And they become various other sub-branches, which eventually becomes the universe. So the first line of Krishna essentially summarizes hours of discussion that we have had about the creation. Urdhva Moolam, Adaha Shakam, Ashwattam Prahuravyayam. And Krishna describes, or rather Veda Vyasa describes that this universe is like an Ashwatha tree. Yeah. So that comparison analogy has got deep philosophical overtones that probably is for another occasion. But this chapter, this particular verse fits very well with the 24 tattvas that we have described. So now these 24 tattvas are there. These are all jadas, they're all prakritis, and now they have to mix up and form the material universe. Now I want to go a little bit scientific here, because all of us who are here are of scientific predisposition. We are all qualified professionals, and we want to have a logical discussion about all this. So I want to talk a little bit about the observable universe, and I spent a few days looking at this. Now, in the observable universe, that is, once the 24 tattvas are there, they are mixed and the Brahmanda has come into being, that is, the material universe has come into being. What do the scientists of the modern day, the astronomers and the astrophysicists, what is their view of the observable universe? Now, I have put observable in inverted commas, because observable universe is all that we can see or detect by the various telescopes and the instruments that we have to observe the universe. Now, the current prevailing theory is that there are about 10 to the power 12 galaxies in the observable universe. And that number, I just wanted to write the number of zeros to see how it looks like. That's a big number. Now, in our Milky Way, there are about 10 to the power of 12 stars in our own Milky Way, which is not the biggest of galaxies, I'm told. So that amounts to well over 100 billion, or several billion stars, billion stars, okay? Now, so you have 10 to the power 12 stars, and within the stars, you have all the planetary systems that are going on, just like our solar system, which is sun is only one star in our galaxy. Yeah. So if there are 10 to the power 12 stars, you might assume there are many stars where the planets are going around. So the calculation at this point of time is, in the whole of universe, possibly there are 10 to the power 24 stars in the universe. Okay. Now, chapter 15, Gita, verse 3, the first half of the verse 3 actually captures this. He says, Na rupamasya iha tata upalabhyate, na antaha, na cha adihi, na cha sampratishta. Vyasa, Krishna is saying, who has seen the beginning of the universe? Who has seen the end of the universe? Who has seen how the universe is maintained? So that concept in the Gita is quite understandable from this whole numbers that I've written, all these observable universe and predictions and so on. There is a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, PNAS, and some of us who run laboratory research groups in the university, getting papers published in PNAS, it's a high impact journal. And for us, it's a 4-star publication. So we do look at this journal very, very seriously with whatever data that gets presented there. So there was one such data in the astrobiology section describing the prevalence of Earth-sized planets orbiting sun-like stars in our own galaxy. And the numbers are quite striking. 40 billion planets in a galaxy could potentially support life. This is Milky Way. And the scientists, basically, the astronomers basically go on and describe that 1 in 5 stars could have planets supporting life. And they also say that the nearest Earth-like star is like 12 light years away. Okay. So all pointing out that, we are not alone in this universe. In fact, there is a Drake equation. Some of you may be familiar with the Drake equation. Go to SETI website. Search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's a very interesting website to look through. But there is this famous Drake equation that actually estimates what is the probability or the chances that life may be existing in other parts of the universe. And the numbers that come out is quite striking. You're looking at millions and millions of places in the universe where there may be life. Okay? So this is from a very scientific hypothesis of what the scientists believe at this point of time. But I would actually argue this is no big deal, because our Vedic philosophers have always known that life exists everywhere in the universe. They've always known that life exists everywhere in the universe. If you, for example, the famous Gayatri mantra that we do, and we say the 7 lokas, the higher planes, Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, Suvarloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Maharloka, and Satyaloka. So these are all the ones that we do when we do our Gayatri Japa or Sandhya Vandana or whatever. And then there are the worlds that are below the Bhuloka, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala, and Lokas. These are the 14 levels of the universe that the Vedas are describing. In fact, the 14 petals on which Chaturmukha Brahma is sitting, that picture that I put at the left-hand corner essentially again grasps this. The 14 petals on which Chaturmukha Brahma is sitting basically corresponds to the 14 lokas. And in each loka is teeming with living beings of various capacities. Yeah. So what the astronomers are trying to discover today, our Vedic philosophy has always accepted that fact that it is a stupid argument to believe that we are the only ones on the earth. Life is only on this tiny little planet, and there are no lives elsewhere. Okay, that is a silly concept to have. It's always been the Vedic view. So that again, the reason why I'm bringing this is to say that when we talk about the Vedic God, the Vedic Devatas and so on, they are not just on this earth. We are talking about living beings of higher intelligence that are spread across the universe. And that is the grand view of the Vedic philosophy, is looking at living things, sentient beings who are there all over the universe, who not only influence each other, but they also have influence on earth and also our own lives. This is the grand view of the Vedic philosophy, and that is what I want to focus on in the next few slides. So moving on to the next slide. Now we accept that there is life pervading everywhere in the universe. Now the sentient beings or the souls, let's say sentient beings, they're pervading everywhere in the universe. So our Vedic rishis have already given a classification of that. Krishna has already given a classification. We have already classified all these living beings spread across the universe. Verse 16 to 18 in chapter 15. Again, it says, it brings that to our mind. Dva imo purusho loke, kshara akshara evacha, ksharaha sarvani bhutani, kutastaha akshara uchyate. Then it says, uttamaha purushastvanyaha paramatma iti udahurataha. The same guy is also called Purushottama. Okay? So it says, all of the sentient beings in this world, they can be classified into 3 types. The Kshara Purushas, the Kutastha Akshara, which is only 1, and the Purushottama, who is higher than 2. So the question is, who are these Kshara and Akshara Purushas? Now, I've just taken some evidence from Paramashruti and Skanda Puran, for example. So Paramashruti, for example, we say, Brahma, Shivaha, Rudradayashta, Sharira Ksharanat Ksharaha. So that word becomes important. Sharira Ksharanat Ksharaha. So that gives you a definition of what a Kshara is. Kshara is those jivas that have a perishable body. And it starts from Chaturmukha Brahma to the lowest of the bacterias. They all have perishable bodies. So they are called Kshara Purushas. Okay, because they are jadas also come into the group. The material things also come into the group, because a pot, for example, is also destroyed. It becomes a mud. In that sense, it gets destroyed. So all the jadas and also the jivas that are there in this universe, they all become kshara purushas. Then there is another one, Lakshmi. If you look at Paramashruti, it says Lakshmi aksharad hatvat aksharaha tat paro hari. So Lakshmi is who? Kshara dehatvat aksharaha. She has a body, but her body is indestructible. It does not get destroyed. So that is why she is called Kutasto Aksharaha. Okay. Skanda Puran also captures the same thing. Brahma, Shiva, Suparna, Isha, Shakra, Surya, Guhadayaha, Sarve Kshara, Aksharatu, Shri Ekaha, Tat Paro Harihi. Clear definition of who is what. There cannot be any arguments on this. So these are Kshara, and then you have Akshara. Then you have the Purushottama, who is the Supreme Being himself, who is beyond all this. Now, even that Supreme Being is also described in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, as Akshara. So that is a different reason why he is also described as Akshara. For example, if you go to Mundaka Upanishad, and we discussed this in the very first class about Paravidya and Aparavidya. So there it came as Atapara Yaya Tad Aksharam Adigamyate. That body of scriptures that give us the knowledge of the Supreme is Paravidya. Okay. Mandukya Upanishad, very first verse, Om iti etad aksharam idam sarvam tasya upavyakhyanam. It says Om iti etad aksharam. That Om is this aksharam. This aksharam is this Brahman. This Brahman is this Supreme Being. And it goes on and talks about the significance of Om and so on. So what does that mean to summarize this slide? So Akshara, so Kshara means jivas. Okay. So jivas that have perishable bodies are called ksharas. Now, when the jivas shed their material bodies and reach liberation and they go to moksha, they have body, but that body is indestructible. So when they have attained moksha, then they also become akshara purushas. But they become akshara purushas only having been a kshara purusha before. Akshara Lakshmi has never had that situation. Vishnu is an akshara, but he is an independent akshara. His body never has any destruction, but he is an independent being. Lakshmi is dependent on him. Now, the word akshara, again, the etymology of akshara itself is very interesting. It says, akshoti iti aksharaha. He who is omnipotent and omnipresent and who knows everything is aksharaha. You can separate that aksharaha into aksharaha. Ksharaha means destructible, means opposite, so indestructible. Then the other one is aksha plus ra. Aksha means your indriyas, your sense organs. Ra means he who is in your sense organs and enjoying your sense organs is called akshara. Then you can also carry on splitting this word, because Sanskrit is such a beautiful language. You can take it into plus ksha plus ra. The whole of the Sanskrit language has got 51 letters, starting with A and finishing with ksha. So all letters that put together form the Vedas. So the whole of the Vedas describe the Supreme Being. And when you know that, you get Ananda. Ra is Ananda. Yeah, Ramayati. Ra is Ananda. So again, it gives you all those various meanings. It's almost like, for example, you may be familiar with something called Kabbalah. Yeah, in Christian philosophers, they use this technique. The Jews, when they read the Torah, they use this technique called the Kabbalah, Kabbalic interpretation of the Torah, of the Jewish text in Hebrew, where they split and move the words here and there and get different philosophical meaning. So our Vedic philosophers have been doing this even before many of the other philosophers evolved. Is almost like a Kabbalic interpretation of what Akshara means. So this slide gives you the overarching classification of Kshara, Akshara, and Purushottama. Hold on to that idea, because the next slide, what I'm going to summarize is, so how can you classify this further? So the philosophers have thought about this problem quite a lot. So if there are all these jivas, if all these jivas are all over the place, then how do we classify them so that we can try and approach this in a very rational way? So for example, I'm taking this view from Tattva Sankhyanā, which is a work of Madhvacharya, which basically summarizes all these sentient entities. What is the classification? So all the sentient entities on the existence become what is called tattvas. So as I said, 24 tattvas, they all mix and form the material universe, and the jivas get the material bodies. So it says, Swatantram aswatantram cha dvividam tattvamishyase swatantro bhagavan Vishnuhu. So there is this one independent being called Vishnu who is independent. Then you have aswatantra entities, all else that are dependent on him. So then the philosophers would classify aswatantra into two, bhava and abhava. Bhava means that which has existence, and abhava is that which is non-existent. And within bhava, they will classify this into sentient and non-sentient. And within sentient, they would say that which has never had suffering and that which has suffering. That which has never had suffering is called dukkha asprashta, which is Lakshmi. Then you have dukkha sprashtas, that is the ones that have suffering of some sort. Suffering means not just going through pain, but having that material entanglement or material covering itself is a dukkha sprashta. So then that is divided into vimuktas and dukkha samstas. So vimuktas are the ones that have already attained liberation. And then you divide those vimuktas who are also aksharas into devas, rishis, pitrus, pa and naras. Naras are the highest among humans who have attained liberation. Pas are these great chakravartis or kings who have attained liberation. Prahalad, for example, is a great example of that. Pitrus are, there is a separate Pitrugana devatas, but also the ancients or ancestors who have attained liberation. And then rishis, the highly knowledgeable beings who have attained liberation. And then you have the devas who have attained liberation. So that is one group. Then you have dukkha samstas, are the ones that are still in material, they have a material covering still, they haven't yet attained mukti. So then there is a clarification that goes mukti yogyas, mukti ayogyas. Let's not deal with mukti ayogyas at this point. Let's focus on mukti yogyas. So these are the beings, the sentient beings currently in this material universe. So the philosophers classify all the material, the sentient beings in the universe into 5 categories: devas, rishis, pitrus, pas and naras. Yeah. Now, I had to spend the last 20-25 minutes to get you to this point of talking about devas. The reason being, when we have to talk about devas, we need to have all this background and then approach this concept of devas as per Vedic philosophies. So what does the word deva means? So in the English word divine, you've heard of divine, the coffee is divine. So the divine comes from the Sanskrit word deva. That is where the word divine comes from. We use the word divyam, for example, in our language. So essentially the word deva gives you an idea of light. It gives you an idea of jnana, knowledge. So these guys are highly knowledgeable. They are highly evolved sentient beings. So that is the idea that you can get from jnana, from the word devas. Now there are 6 different meanings for devas: divu kridayam, divu vijayate, divu stuti, divu kanti, divu gati, divu samartya, and so on. So that is the etymology, the nirukta of devas. So essentially what it means is, divu kridayam means every action for him is a playful action, in the sense that they can do things very effortlessly. Yeah. Divu stuti means people worship that higher exalted beings. Divu samartya means that high being has a lot of samartya, has a lot of potency, it's got a lot of strength. So those are some of the words. So from devas, of course, there is the devasya deva, who is Vishnu himself, who's got all these 6 in infinite proportions. But there are the devatas who have these qualities in a limited proportions. So this is the idea of devas. Now, if you come to the left-hand corner of the screen, I have put this slide because I always get a little bit annoyed when people say, oh, this Hindu faith, they have so many gods, they are worshipping so many gods, and so on and so forth. And I sometimes feel sorry when people say that, because it is not their mistake. It is their ignorance that makes them talk like that. But at the same time, it is also our mistake, because we have not informed them about what our devas actually mean. It is our own mistake that we have let this situation come to this point. Yeah. The reason why I say that is, the concept of devas is not unique to Hinduism. If you go to Zoroastrianism, they talk about 7 different chiefs, devatas. If you go to Christianity, let's not go too far, let's go to Christianity. There are 10 devatas. They are the angels, the dominions, and so on. So they also have devatas. If you go to Islam, from Gabriel, they have 3 more. So they have 4 devatas, even in Christianity. So there are these devatas that are there in all views and all religions. It is not unique to Hinduism. It is not unique, and that is a message that if there is one concept that you want to take away from today's talk, that is one concept that I would want to take is this aspect of devatas is not unique to Hinduism. It is just that our devata philosophy is extremely evolved. It's highly evolved compared to the other philosophical systems. I'll illustrate that in the coming slides. Our concept of devatas is much more rational and much more evolved than any other systems that I have been able to explore. Okay, so this gives you where the devatas come in the larger picture of all the sentient beings in the universe. So Abhijit, please move on to the next slide. So now I want to introduce this concept called Abhimani Devatas. Okay, so this is an important concept for us to understand. So if you want to approach the Upanishads, if you want to read the Upanishads and the Vedas without having this concept of Abhimani Devatas, you cannot understand the Upanishad. One cannot understand the head or tail of the Upanishads unless we have this Abhimani Devata concept. The key there is, in Vedic philosophy, every aspect of the universe has got a conscious being behind it that controls it. Okay, that is the basic philosophy of Vedas. There is always a conscious thing behind an unconscious thing. That unconscious thing, that conscious thing that somehow controls the unconscious jada, could be at various levels. In our own bodies, it could be the jiva, which is a conscious being. It could possibly be the devatas, who may also be influencing this body. It could be Lakshmi who is influencing this body, or it could be Vishnu, Narayana, Krishna himself who will be controlling this body. So all these Abhimani Devatas, they all are going in various levels of hierarchy. They become important. Why that is the case? So if you look at the Vedas, I've just picked up this couple of verses from Shatapatha Brahmana. It says Mruda Bravit, which means the mud spoke. Then the next word, Apaha Abruvan, the water spoke. Chandogya Upanishad, we just saw a few minutes ago. Ta Apa Aikshante, water saw. Tat Tejo Aikshata, fire saw. So all these things makes no sense. If this is to be taken literally, can the mud speak? Can the water speak? Can the water see? Can the fire see? They just don't make sense if you take the material water or the material mud or the material fire. Yeah? So there is a much more of a philosophical, esoteric meaning to these words. Look at Antaryami Brahmanam. We spoke about Antaryami Brahmanam, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, when we spoke about how this Antaryami, who is in everything and controls it. If you look at these verses there, Ya Prithvyam Tishtan Prithivya Antaro. I've underlined those. So then it says Apsu. So Prithvi means earth, Apsu means water. Then it says Agnau. Antariksham means sky. Vayo, it means air. So it says all these guys don't know. It says, if you look at the first word, Yaha Prithivyam Tishtan Prithivya Antaro Yam Prithvi Naveda Yasya Prithvi Shariram Yaha Prithivim Antaro Yamayati Yeshate Atma Antaryami Amrutaha. Yeah. That is that mantra that goes on. There are 21 mantras in that particular Antaryami Brahmanam that explains how this cosmic Antaryamin is in every aspect. So when I say Prithivyam, it says, the verse says that the earth does not know that this guy is inside him. How will the earth know? It is a jada. The verse, when you look at it superficially, it will not make sense. Similarly, in Chandogya Upanishad, the famous, the Tattvamasi 9 examples that come. Here also there is a second example that talks about it. Imaha Somya Nadyaha Purastat Prachyaha Syandante Paschat Pratishchyaha Samudrat Samudrameva Apiyanti Sa Samudra Eva Bhavati Ta Ita Tatrana Vidhu Iyam Mahamasmi Iti it goes on. It says, what it means is, it says, when just as how the rivers merge in the ocean, but the rivers do not know that they are different. Each river is different from another river, and it goes on like that. How will the rivers know? Rivers are non-living entities. How can the river know that it is there, that it is different from another river? So when you read the Upanishads in that superficial sense, it will not make logical sense for beings like us who are quite educated and who want to look everything rationally. To settle this problem, Vedavyasa wrote a sutra called Abhimani Vyapadeshastu Visesha Anugatibhyam, which means that wherever in the Vedas these words are coming, they should not be taken for the Jada. They should be taken for the Abhimani Devata, or the conscious being behind this. So when I say Mruda Bravid, which means the mud spoke, means the conscious being behind the mud that controls the mud spoke. Apaha Bruvan, which means the conscious being behind water. Example, Varuna spoke. So that is Ta, Apa. Then if I say Tat Tejo Aikshata, Tejo, fire, Agni, Agni Devata, Agni Narayana, they saw. So that is how you have to interpret this. So I think this is important, because in the subsequent slides, I will bring about these concepts as to how the Vedas take these Abhimani Devatas to describe some core fundamental philosophies. So Abhijit, next slide. So now the question comes is, how many Devatas are out there? Yeah, how many Devatas are out there? You're saying so many Devatas. Okay, the current prevailing view is, some schools will say that there are 33 crore Devatas that are described in Vedic philosophy. That is a huge number. Okay, and some view is it's not 33, it is 9 crores Devatas that are described in the Vedic philosophy. You and I, we don't have to have a controversy or a discussion around this. Both numbers are huge. So there was a discussion in Janaka's court, which is described in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And again, we took one of the examples, I think 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, describing, I think it was a discussion between Gargi and Yajnavalkya, I think we took. This time, it is a discussion between a guy called Shakalya. And the Shakalya is asking the same question to Yajnavalkya. Just to remind you, for some of you who have joined new, this is a great chapter in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where there was a king called Janaha Vaidehi. He calls all the philosophers of the region to come in to have a philosophical discourse, so that he can give 1,000 cows to whoever is the most knowledgeable philosopher of the time. And each horn of the cow is with a gold coin. So they get 2,000 gold coins plus 100 cows, whoever is the cleverest. Okay, so all the philosophers assemble, and Yajnavalkya, who was the greatest philosopher of his time, he was also there. So he said, I am the greatest philosopher, I'm going to take all the cows and the coins, and he was about to leave. So at that point, the other philosophers stand up and ask him questions. They ask him some deep philosophical questions, and he answers those questions. Okay, so one such Brahmanam, one such chapter that is described is called Shakalya Brahmanam. Sakalya is asking the same question. He asks the same question to Yajnavalkya. How many devas are out there? Atahi enam vidagdaha Shakalyaha papacha kati deva Yajnavalkyo iti. So how many devas? Okay. So I don't want to go deep into this. It is a very, very, very interesting chapter. So please try and refer this and have a look in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 3rd Adhyaya. Yeah, so he says, so the way it comes is, they start off with 3003, then they come to 303, then they come to 33. Then in the 33 devatas, Shakalya asked, who are the 6 chief devata? Then he lists, then who is the 3 among the 6 who is most important? Then he asks, who is the 2 who is the most important? Then who is the 1.5 who is most important? And finally, who is the most important devata? So he keeps going and asking that question. Now 33 is important, and I'll tell you why 33 is important. So there is, in the second verse, he says, Ashto, I've underlined that for our benefit, Ashto Vasavaha Ekadasha Rudraha Dwadasha Adityaste Ekatrimshat Indriyascha Prajapatishcha Triyam Strin Shau Viti. So he says 8 Vasus, 12 Adityas, 11 Rudras, Indra and Prajapati are the chief devatas who look after the universe. And then Shakalya goes on and asks, who are these 8 devatas? Then he goes each one, 8 Vasus, name the 8 Vasus and so on. So read up about this, but the Vasus become very important. Now in this Upanishad, the 8 Vasus that are described in this Upanishad is slightly different from the 8 Vasus that will be described in other Upanishads. Yeah. So now the reason why that is like that is you have to then put all the information together and understand the context. We've always come to this contextual relevance of what is going on. So these Vasus, the Yajnavalkya goes on and describes why they are called Vasus. Yeteshu hidam vasu sarvam hitam iti tasmad vasavaha iti. He says it is these entities, these 8 entities that are fundamental requirements for maintaining and establishing the universe. And that is why these 8 Vasus are important, is what Yajnavalkya says. And who are these 8 Vasus? Now, just focus on the one in red. I've listed them. What are dear Yajnavalkya is saying? He says Agni, Prithvi, Vayu, Antariksham, Aditya, Dyav, Chandrama, Nakshatra, iti, Ashta, Vasu. So you have to go into etymology. The Vedic language is the archaic Vedic language is slightly complicated, but essentially what it means is Garuda. Prithvi is another name for Suparni, who is Garuda's consort. Then you have Brahma and Mukhya Prana. Then you have Saraswati and Bharati. Then you have Shiva. Then you have Uma. Then you have Kama and Indra. These are the 8 chief devatas that Yajnavalkya says are fundamental to the running of the universe. Now, the reason why I felt I have to put this Upanishad verse is most of us would be familiar with these 8 names. These various devatas will be familiar with regards to what we do in our daily worship and what we see and pray when we go to temple, for example. So moving on to the next slide. So now we have a grand vision of the universe. So these guys are called the Tattva Abhimani Devatas. Okay. So now the Devatas of Vedic philosophy is quite a field into itself. And you can spend days, weeks, months, whole lifetime studying about this. So now there are various categories of devatas in Vedic philosophy. You have the Tattva Abhimani devatas, you have Atattva Abhimani devatas, you have Karmacha devatas, Ajana devatas, and so on and so forth. So here what I have listed is the 24 Tattva Abhimani devatas. Okay. So the Vedic philosophy describes, look, behind every component of the material universe, there is a sentient being who has his jurisdiction to make sure that this aspect of the universe works properly. Why that is the case, we'll come to that a little bit later. I've got a couple of interesting slides to get you around that concept. So the names here will all be familiar with you. I'll go through this. See, the Abhimani Devata of Mula Prakriti is Lakshmi. She's got 3 forms, Shri, Bhu and Durga. Mahat, Chaturmukha Brahma. Ahankara is Rudra or Shiva. And this guy is key. Shiva is key in creation because he does all sorts of things. He does all sorts of 5 different aspects of the universe, the Tanmatras, the Bhutas, the Karma Indriyas, Jnana Indriyas, the 5 components of Manas, all these 5 comes from Rudra. So Rudra, we all are familiar with Rudra. Now, if you go to the Panchabhutas, look at Ganesha. He is sitting there. He is the Abhimani Devata of Akasha. And I want to describe an example at the tail end of this presentation of where Ganesha is placed in the Vedic pantheon. He looks after the material sky. Akasha is his portfolio, as it were. Okay. Shiva looks after primarily the mind, along with Garuda and Sesha. The mind has got various devatas who control it. You have Garuda, Sesha, Rudra, Indra, Kama, Brihaspati, Chandra, Parvati, Brahma, Lakshmi. They all have an influence on the mind. But the chief ones are Rudra, Garuda and Sesha. Okay. If you look at Karma Indriyas, if you look at your walk, the speech, yeah, you have Saraswati, Bharati, Parvati. These are all devatas who have the jurisdictions of controlling the walk. If you look at your Jnana Indriyas, your hearing is Chandra, okay, and your eyes is Surya. So they all have these portfolios. Grahana is interesting, Ashwini. Grahana is smell. You smell through your nose. And what are the nose? Nose has got two nostrils. And for 2 nostrils, you have the Ashwini twins. They look after it. Yeah. So if you look at Buddhi, your intelligence, Saraswati, Bharati, Parvati, they all play a role in these aspects. That is the components. Remember, I want to remind you, this is still the Brahmanda, pre-Brahmanda that we are talking, where all these evolutes have happened. So the system in Vedic philosophy is consciousness is behind it, have a portfolio and jurisdiction to make sure that that component of the material universe is working properly. Yeah. So that is the portfolios of devatas in Brahmanda. What about in Pindanda, which is our body? And we spent a lot of time talking about this in our sessions before, and I've listed them here exactly where they are placed. Without eyes, Surya is your Abhimani Devata of your eye. Okay, and for your speech, Agni, Saraswati, Bharati, Parvati, they have the portfolio. Okay, for your urination and defecation, Mitra and Yama. Okay, hands is very important. Hand is the most important karma indriya. Indra is the Abhimani Devata for that. For hearing, it is Chandra. Okay, so look at this figure. What are the portfolios of all these devatas as per Vedic philosophy in our own body? So that what immediately recognizes the portfolio in the Brahmanda and the portfolio in the Pindanda are exactly the same. So they are doing the same function. Now, so this figure, the next figure, Abhijit, essentially says, we have summarized this slide before. It's basically how do the souls receive sense input from external world. They have 5 senses. It goes to the brain, it goes to the mind, and then the soul receives that information and says, yes, I am conscious of this knowledge. Yeah. Similarly, how do the souls perform their activities? The soul is the doer. We discussed that last week or the week before. That he's a doer, and he uses his intellect, his mind, sends information to the brain, and from there to the various karma indriyas, and he does various actions. Okay, and your devatas that we are talking about all have some roles in that as per Vedic philosophy. Moving on to the next slide. This I hope you will find interesting. The way initially is complicated, but when you start thinking about it, how does a BMW company work? It all makes sense. Yeah. So for a BMW, if you say your car, remember in Kataka Upanishad we say Shariram Ratamevacha. So this Sharira is the Rata, this Sharira is the chariot. So if you take that analogy and you say this Sharira is the BMW car. The BMW car, how is it made? I went into the BMW website to see what are all their departments and how they do it. They have a press shop where they press all the metals. They have the body works where they make the bodies. They have the paint shop, and then they have the assembly section where everything is put together. Then they have a seat production, and then they have an engine production. So there are at least 6 key departments, and then you have a car. So similarly for your body, you have the various departments that all needs to be put together for your body to work. And of course, you need servicing, you need parts and maintenance, because each component can be opened up. And then each component will not work some point of time. So you will have to go to the supervisor of that particular department and get that thing sorted out. So your body is exactly like a BMW car. And that exactly is the view of the Vedic philosophers. They have said this body has got various components. Each component of this body has got a department that looks after it. And they're all under a control, because that is the management structure. They're all under a management structure. So on the left, if you look at the corporate structure of BMW, you have the apex, you have the president or the chairman. Could be our Vishnu there. Then you have the top level guys, and then the various management structure that is operating in a company like BMW. If a simple company like a BMW can have these kind of structures, why not this big machine called the universe, which is so complicated and which is so big? Why can't we have a similar management structure? And that is the view of the Vedic philosophers, that there has to be a management structure to this big universe. So my view on this, the way I think about this, is Vishnu is the chief executive. Lakshmi is the chief financial officer. Brahma is the chief operating officer, and from Brahma goes the management hierarchy of running this universe. And if you go to the next slide, I have summarized what the management structure of the universe actually looks like. So what I have done for our benefit is I've extracted all the information from the various Upanishads and scriptures, and I've given you a ranking from 1 to 25. Okay, I should technically do up to 24 because there are 24 tattvas that make up the Brahmanda. Yeah, so there are 24 to 25 different devatas who have that portfolio. So on the top of this rank sits Vishnu. Next comes Lakshmi. Then comes Chaturmukha Brahma, Mukhya Prana, and all the Rujus as they are called. Then comes Saraswati, Bharati, and their Ruju Patnis, their corresponding wives. So Chaturmukha Brahma's wife is Saraswati, Vayu's wife is Bharati, and all the Rujus are the Ruju Patnis. Then you have Garuda, Sesha, and Rudra. And then you have Vishnu's Shanmahishis. And then you have 7th is the consorts of Garuda, Sesha, Rudra. 8th is Indra. Okay. And then if you come to the next level, 12th is Surya, Chandra, Yama. 13th is Varuna. And 15th is Agni. Narada is 14. Look where Ganapati is coming. He is ranked 18th in the Vedic system. His brother Shanmukha is also coming there. We'll talk about him in a couple of slides. He is also in rank 18. He is the chief of the Devas army. He is the chief. He comes also in rank 18. Then it's so on. So the Vedic philosophy is quite interesting, that it talks about this management structure, which is the Vedic pantheon, and it gives them ranking and says, this is where they all come. Yeah, it is up to us to accept it or not. But if we believe Vedas is our supreme source of knowledge, everything that comes from the Vedas is authentic and confirmed, then we will have to take this as the Vedas say. If you look at Aitareya Brahmana, it says, Agnirvai Devanam Avamo Vishnuhu Paramaha Tad Antaraha Sarva Devataha. That is a verdict from Aitareya Brahmanam. So it says, Agnirvai Devanam Avamo. Why? Because he is ranked 15. Vishnuhu Paramaha. Why? Because he is ranked 1. Tad Antaraha Sarva Devataha, and all others are in between these. Vishnu and Agni is what Aitareya Brahmana's verdict. Taitareya Samhita also says the same thing. Anir Avamo Devanam Vishnuhu Paramaha. Yeah. So we take our evidence from the scriptures to say this Vedic pantheon is. Now, here is an interesting slide because it will create some confusion. But there are so many gods. If you look at the Vedas, if you look at Rig Veda, there are so many hymns for various deities. So on the left, I have listed the number of hymns. If you look at the Rig Veda, Agni has 289 rigs for him. Indra has 289. Agni has 218. Vishnu has 6. Rudra has 5. Does that mean Indra, who's got the maximum number of hymns, is the supreme god of the Vedas? No. The verdict is very clear there, and I put it in red. The importance of Vedic God is not to be measured by the number of hymns devoted to them or by the extent to which they are invoked in the thought of the rishis, but by the functions they perform. Look at what Rig Veda describes about Vishnu. Tad Vishnoho paramam padam sada pashyanti surayaha Vishnurukam virnani paro vacham yaha parthivani vimame rajamsi paro matraya tanva vridana natve mahitvam manvashnuvanti nate Vishnu jayamano najato deva mahimnaha paramantamap. So Rig Veda is saying, oh, this guy is so big, nobody can know about him. He is the supreme. All the ones in moksha are looking at him and praying him and so on. That's what the Rig Veda is saying. And then Kataka Upanishad says, Tad Vishnoho paramam padam, is exactly saying what the Rig Veda is saying. Yeah. So, Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, the Shanti mantra, Shanno Mitraha, Sham Varunaha, Shanno Bhavati Varyama, Sanno Indro Brihaspati, Shanno Vishnu Rukramaha. Vishnu Yonim Kalpyate Brihadaranika Upanishad. Let's think about our own Bhagavad Gita. We have done the chapter 7 recently. Veda Vyasa is saying, Mattaha Parataram na anyat kinchid asti dhananjaya. There is nothing that is bigger than me. Yeah, is what Krishna himself is saying. So we have to take the internal evidence within the Vedas and the scriptures to try and assign, although there are various hymns of the Rig Vedas, It is it is not the numbers that matter. It is what is the function that the individual devata that matters, that then forms the basis of the evidence by which how we should proceed. So hopefully over the next 15 minutes, I'll be able to complete this session. So now we spoke about how Vishnu is the highest as per Rig Veda, as per Katha Upanishad, and so on. So that's right, Abhijit, stay there. So now the question is, okay, Vishnu is the highest, Lakshmi is the second highest. After that, what? Yeah. So you will have to again go into the internal evidence of the Upanishad. Now go to, for example, Prashna Upanishad. Prashna Upanishad, there is a beautiful question that our Vaidarbhyaha is asking. Yeah. So Atahi enam Bhargava Vaidarbhyaha prapracha. So he is basically asking the question. I don't want to go through this in detail. Basically, the question he is asking. So the Prashna Upanishad, just coming back to Prashna Upanishad, it is a discourse between 6 students and Pippala the Rishi. 6 questions are asked and Pippala the Rishi is answering those questions, and these are profound philosophies. So the second question, Dvitiyaha Prashnaha, this guy Vaidarbhihi is asking this question: how many devatas are there? What are the devatas' function? Who is the most important among devatas? He's asking those questions. So Pippalada is answering those questions. Yeah. So basically, what he is saying is Tan Varishtaha Prana Uvacha. So he's saying, yes, there are lots of these devatas, you know, and he says Mukhya Prana. After you talk about Lakshmi and Vishnu, Prashna Upanishad, Pippala the Rishi is saying Tan Varishtaha Prana Uvacha. He says Prana is the next. So when I say Prana, Mukhya Prana means is Brahma Vayu. So they are of the same rank. So he says Chaturmukha Brahma and Vayu are the highest among all the jivas. So these are called Jivottamas. And the Rishi takes 2 beautiful examples. Without going into the details, I've just put the figures on the right. He takes an example of a beehive. And when I read this, I was quite shocked. So basic what it says is, and I have underlined this, the example they are giving is Tad yata makshika madukara rajanam utkramantam. So what that means is the Rishi is saying, just like how in a beehive, there is this queen bee. As long as the queen bee is in the beehive, all other bees are there. As soon as the queen bee leaves the beehive, all other bees leave. When the queen bee returns to the beehive, all other bees come back again. Such is the position of Mukhya Prana stroke Chaturmukha Brahma, is the conclusion of Pippalada Rishi. Now, there are 2 things about this. Number 1, it gives you an idea of the importance of this Devata, Chaturmukha Brahma and Mukhya Prana. But my other more fascinating thing is, how on earth Pippalada Rishi knew that the beehive and has a queen bee and there are all these servant bees and so on. It is the sense of observation of the Rishis is captured in this verse. You know, they have taken philosophical examples based on what they have observed in the natural world. Now we have all this David Attenborough's programs on bees and queen bees and how all the bees coming. But look at our Pippalada Rishi. He had described this in Prashna Upanishad. You know, you're looking at so many 1,000 years ago. And he gives that analogy. And also he gives an analogy of a chariot. He says, just like how the spokes, so Ara iva ratanabhau prane sarvam pratishtitam. So what that means is, just like how the spokes of a wheel are all attached to this nabhau. So nabhau means, the nabhau there essentially means the nave of the wheel. So they are all attached to it. Similarly, because this attachment structure of the wheel essential to get this chariot to move. So it says similarly, all these deities are attached to this Mukhya Prana. Yeah. Now, next question. So now we understand Lakshmi, you have Vishnu, you have Lakshmi, then you have Chaturmukha Brahma. Then what? What happens to others? Then Kataka Upanishad gives you a deep description. Next slide. Yeah. Kataka Upanishad gives wonderful explanations of this. Read up the first adhyaya, third verse. Indrebhyaha parahi artha, artebhyashta param manaha, manasastu para buddhihi, buddhe ratma mahan para, mahatara param avyaktam avyaktat purusha paraha, purushan na param kinchit sakashta saparagatihi. Beautiful verse. Basically what it says is Indriyas. Okay, it says Indriyebhyaha parahiyartha, which means higher than the Indriyas are the objects. Higher than the objects is the mind. Higher than the mind is the buddhi. Higher than the buddhi is the avyakta. Higher than the avyakta is Purusha, and nobody is higher than Purusha. Okay, how do you interpret this? So again, that is why the concept of Abhimani Devatas is important here. I come back to it again and again. Unless we understand this, we will never be able to understand what Yama is telling Nachiketa here. So Indra is the head of all the Indriyas. His rank is 8th. Okay. Artha is Parvati, Varuni and Suparni. They are the Abhimani Devatas of all the Tanmatras. They are the 7th rank. So that makes sense. 7th rank is higher than the 8th rank. Then it says, beyond the Artha is the Manas, Sattvam. So that is Rudra, Garuda and Shesha. They are the 5th rank. Then higher than the Manas is Buddhi, which is Saraswati Bharati, which is the 4th rank. Then it is Atma Mahan is Chaturmukha Brahma, who is the 3rd rank. Avyakta is Chetana Prakriti, Lakshmi, who is the 2nd rank. And then it says Purushan na param kinchite. Purusha is rank 1 and there is nobody higher than him. Okay, it kind of gives you that gradation of various Indriyas. So again, having that Abhimani Devata concept is central for us to actually understand what the Upanishad is actually saying. So moving on to the next slide. So we are coming to the tail end. So now, having discussed all this about various Abhimani Devatas, how does it operate in action? How does it operate in our daily lives? Let me take an example of the family of Shiva. Shiva, Parvati, Ganesha, and Shanmukha. Let me take these examples to illustrate how the Vedic philosophy evolves. So, there is a Gita verse, 2nd chapter 42, which says, Mam imam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipashtita. Veda Vadarataha Partha na anyad asti iti vadena. In the sense that the fellows who look at the Vedas in a very superficial sense will just look at the flowery languages of the Vedas, but actually will not understand what the deeper meanings of the philosophical meanings of the Vedas. So when we talk about Shiva, Rudra, Ganesha and Shanmukha, let us see what the Vedic philosophical view on this. Okay. Now, as I told you before, Shiva is the Abhimani Devata of the mind. Parvati is the Abhimani Devata of Vak. Ganesha is the Abhimani Devata of Akasha. So that fits in extremely well. What the mind thinks, we speak, which travels in space, in air, which is this combination. Mind, Vak and Akasha, which is Shiva, Parvati and Ganesha. So they all have a relationship with regards to how we conduct our own life. Now, if you take mind, for example, mind is key. Shiva is the key component there. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Uttaret Atmana Atmanam, na Atmanam Avashadet, Atmanyeva Atmana Bandhu, Atmaiva Rupuratmana. Amrita Bindu Upanishad says, Mana Eva Manushyanam Karanam Bandha Moksha Yoho. It says this mind is the reason for your liberation. Mind is the reason for your bondage. Okay, so try and control the mind and try and focus your mind in the right direction. So mind is very important. Who is the controller of the mind? We think we are the controller of the mind. That is a fundamental mistake that we are making. We are not the controller of the mind. The Abhimani Devata of the mind, who is Shiva, is controlling the mind. The Shiva himself is under the control of his Antaryami. So that is the sequence that the Vedic philosophy takes. Vak, Parvati, and Ganesha is interesting because he is the Abhimani Devata of space. Now, then there is a lot of things about Ganesha, but the number 21, and we all know in Ganesh Chaturthi and so on, there are so many things about 21 that comes in Ganesha, and some of you will be more familiar than me around the 21 Modakas and 21 other things, the flowers and everything else that's given to Ganesha. Why? So, if you look at the Brahmanda, and if you look at the Tattva Abhiman, the Tattvas of Brahmanda, and I've listed them, 5 components of the mind, 5 components of Indriya, 5 components of Tanmatra, 5 components of karma indriyas, and then the final evolute of the material universe is the Panchabhutas. And the first to come in Panchabhuta is Akasha. And Akasha's Abhimani Devata is Ganesha. And that number is 21. When you look at the Mahat Tattva, see the Tattva's numbers, the 21st Tattva that comes out is Akasha, whose Abhimani Devata is Ganesha. And so is where your idea of 21s of various things that you do for Ganesha. Now, yes, the Ganesha, that concept of Ganesha also then gives you an idea about, mind, speech, and words that travel in space. So stop useless talk. Ganesha has big ears and big noses. Why? Because it's related to air. As I said, he is the Abhimani Devata of Akasha. Big ears to capture the sound waves. Big nose as for Prana Shakti to meditate and do dhyana. Small mouth. Stop useless talk. Elephants have big ears and big eyes. Keep eyes open, keep your ears open. So those are all the information that you get. Now, for example, in Mandukya Upanishad, the story of Ganesha actually comes in Mandukya Upanishad. And Acharya Madhva talks about this in some great length. So in Mandukya Upanishad, for example, if you look at the second verse, so just to give you a background of Mandukya Upanishad, it talks about consciousness. We spent about this in November of last year talking about consciousness in Upanishads. And Mandukya Upanishad spends a lot of time about consciousness and how it's linked to Om, the syllable Om. So it talks about the Jagrati Sthanaha. So it says, the second mantra, Sarvam Etad Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma, So Ayam Atma Chatushpat, Jagrati Sthanaha, Bahihi Prajnaha, Saptangaha, Ekona Vimshati Mukaha, Stula Book, Vaishwanaraha Pratamaha Padaha. Okay, so that I want you to focus on the word that I've underlined, that Saptangaha Ekona Vimshati Mukaha. So basically what the Upanishad is saying is the controller of the waking state of consciousness of the Jiva is the supreme being or Vishnu who has 7 angas, 7 extremities, and he's got 19 faces. Is how this describes. So what does that mean? It's a very puzzling concept. So basically what it means is this is the Rupa of Vaishwanaraha as described in the Vedas, where Vishnu has 19 heads. The middle head is the face of an elephant, and then there are 19 heads around it. So when I say 7 angas, it means 4 hands, 2 legs, and an elephant trunk, which is a form of this Vaishwanaraha, also called Vishwambara Murti. So, one Vedic view that we are all familiar with, and again, as I said, you will be more familiar than me as to how Ganesha got his head and so on. Here is the Vedic version of this. The Vedic version is, there is a famous Upanishad saying, Yata yata upasate tataiva bhavati. As you worship, so you become. So, the Vedic view on this is, Ganesha, the Akasha Abhimani Devata, did worship on the Vishwambara Murti form of the Supreme Being, which is the form of an elephant, and that is the reason why he got an elephant form. So this is a Vedic version. And during the Puranic times, there are various other versions that have evolved about why Ganesha had elephant forms. Okay. Now, finally, I want to say, but what about Skanda? We all seem to have forgotten who Skanda is and what is his role in Vedic philosophy. Now, Skanda is a very exalted Devata of Vedic pantheon. He ranks 18 along with his brother Ganesha. And what does he do? He does lots of things. We all know that he comes to kill Tarakasura and so on. But he is also the chief of the army of the Devas. But also he has 6 faces. Shan Mukha. Shan is 6 faces. Why does he have 6 faces? He has 6 faces for various reasons in the Puranas that you will know about. Here is the Vedic version of this. He's got 6 faces because worshipping him will allow you to control the 6 terrible things that you can have. Kama, Krodha, Moha, Lobha, Mada, and Matsara. So 6 components that primarily is a result of your downfall. So that one he controls. So here, look at the sequence here. So you have Chaturmukha, who's got 4 heads. Shiva, who's got 5 heads. Then you have Shanmukha, who's got 6 heads. So there are all these kind of numbers that give you deeper philosophy. So now this is a complicated slide. I'm not sure whether we have time. I'll probably skip this slide. Essentially what the Gita is saying here is, the summary of this slide is, the Gita. So now from all that I've told before, I am pretty sure that I've convinced you that worshipping of the Devatas are important because they control certain aspect of the Brahmanda and also your Pindanda. So for you to make that philosophical journey, you need their help, you need their blessings. Without that, you cannot do that, is the view of the Vedas. Krishna or Vedavyasa, on the other hand, seems to indicate something else, but that needs to be taken in concept. So, for example, in the 7th chapter, he says, last verse I've underlined, Devan Devayajo Yanti, Madbhakta Yanti Mamapi. So he says, so the fellows who worship other devatas go to those devalokas, but the ones that worship me come to me. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we should not worship any of the other devatas and we should worship only Vishnu? No, the understanding there is, as stated in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, our goal should be, we want to get rid of liberation, get rid of samsara and go to moksha. The Vedas are very clear. Who is it who can give you liberation and moksha? The Upanishads are clear. They say samsara moksha sthiti bandha hetu is that supreme Brahman. He is the one who can give you moksha. Nobody else can give you moksha. So he must be your final destination. But to reach him, you have to use his family. You have to use his family so that you sharpen up your faculties to move towards him. And why that is the case? So he says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Whenever there is this thing, I come down to earth. But it is also, we all know that when Krishna comes down, where Vishnu comes down, he doesn't come down alone. He does not come alone. He comes with his family. Please remember that. He comes with his family. I know that there are certain schools of Vaishnavas that somehow seems to ridicule worship of other devatas. I would urge them to consider, please remember, when Vishnu comes down, he comes down with his family. In the Mahabharata, the very first verse, Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. In this very first verse, Vyasa has summarized the key family members who come down with Narayana. Okay, who are these? Naram, that is Sesha. Narottama is Bhima. Devi, Rukmani, Saraswati Bharati, Draupadi, Vyasam, who is incarnation of Krishna himself, Vishnu himself, they all come along with him. So at the same time, once his avatara is finished, they go back to him. In fact, the sequence is, if you look at Ramayana and Mahabharata, first all his family members descend on earth first, then he appears. Okay, so his family members is extremely important for him. So my summary slide here is, God should be worshipped along with his family. In the Vedas, they are called Parivara Devatas. Devatas themselves should not be worshipped as Sarvottamas because they cannot give you moksha. If moksha is your desire, you have to worship Devatas so that you reach Krishna and get Sarva, and then you get your moksha. But Devata worship is essential for your spiritual progress because it fine-tunes our faculties. Devatas are in Pindanda because the Vedas tell us they are there because it is God's will. He has instructed them to be in our Indriyas and look after them. So, and in fact, the Devatas themselves perform their function as a form of worship to the Lord. And there are beautiful verses in the Upanishads talking about this. How even seeing Surya is doing yajna when he sees, because he puts that ahuti of the objects into the sense organs called the eyes, and that is how he is doing yajna, is how the Upanishads describe. So the Devatas are also performing their worship. So we worship the Devatas to guide us in the right direction to the Supreme. This is exactly the Ratham analogy that I've told you so many times over the last 4 weeks. That is the next slide, Abhijit. So that is, we move on to the next slide. So so this is our situation. So we are this body, we have this chariot, so we need to move to the right direction. We cannot do this ourselves. We can't control anything in this world. This is the fundamental Vedic position. We need our devatas to help us to maintain our bodies so that we move in the right direction. And this is exactly what the Shodasha Kala Purusha discussion in the Prashna Upanishad is. The 6th question. That is the next slide, the final slide, Abhijit. So this is the whole philosophical discussion of Shodasha Kala Purusha. I always have the Shodasha Kala Purusha on one of my last slides, but I never got time to spend more time on it. But never mind. What basically it says is the Jiva is the 16th entity. It is surrounded by 15 fences, material fences. So the Jiva has to shed the 15 fences, move towards Lakshmi, who is our mother, and she lifts us and gives us to the father, who is Vishnu. So Lakshmi is our mother who lifts us and gives it to our father, who is number 18. So the number 18 is a key number in philosophy, and we have discussed this so many times. Couple of new things that I found over the last 1 week when I was looking at it. If you look at 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is the essence of Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 verses and 2 Pala verses, but 18 verses again. There are 18 verses, 18 parvas in Mahabharata, 18 chapters in Bhagavad Gita. 15th chapter has got 18 key verses. There are 18 days of Mahabharata battle. There are 18 Akshohinis. There are 18 Puranas. And here is another point that I found recently. In Sabarimala, there are 18 steps to reach Ayyappa. Okay. Now, Ayyappa is a very interesting Devata because he does not come in the Vedic pantheon. He somehow doesn't appear in the Vedic pantheon. But still in India, there is a lot of Shraddha and devotion towards Ayyappa. And again, when you look at Ayyappa, the 18 steps is what you need to climb before you reach Vishnu, before you reach Ayyappa. So there are lots of analogies with 18 numbers. So finally, what I want to do is, the mantras that I recite before I start this talk is essentially this. When I say Badram Karanebihi Shruniyama Devaha means, Karana means what? Your ears. Shrunuyama means to listen. Badram means auspicious. So what I am praying before I give this talk is, oh God, please make sure that I can use my ears to hear the right things. Let me use my speech to speak the right things. So in that, what I'm saying is, I'm not just saying God, I'm saying, oh Chandra, who is the Abhimani Devata of my ear, please look after my ear, make sure I hear the right things. And I'm praying to Ganesha and saying, oh Ganesha, who is the Abhimani Devata Vakasha, make sure only the right speech, right sounds hit my ear. And that is how the contemplation should be. And that exactly is what Dhruva has done. If you remember Dhruva's story, and again, I usually say that, Yo antaha pravisya mama vacha imam. So that is also the same prayer that Dhruva is doing. Oh, when I speak, please make sure, please protect my speech. Oh, Abhimani Devatas, protect my speech. But at the same time, oh, the Antaryami who is inside this, please also make sure I do the right speech. I hear the right things and so on. So that is the summum bonum of what I have tried to convey today is the concept of Abhimani Devatas. Okay. God's parivara is important. Without God's parivara, we cannot make progress. God himself, Krishna himself, Vishnu himself has said in all the scriptures that if you neglect my family, I will be very unhappy. He has made it very clear. If you are doing puja, you do with my family. If you are worshipping me, always worship me with Lakshmi. And if you are worshipping other gods, always worship me as a family member of that. So that is how the Vedic philosophy has always been. So we need to bear this in mind before we become very sectarian about this and get into our own confusions and arguments. So on that note, I would want to finish this talk and say Krishna Pranamastu and take any questions. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Madhu. I think another wonderful lecture, and I think you clarified a lot of doubts today, particularly with regards to worshipping multiple gods and everything. That's a common question which comes to many of our youngsters or even the like senior citizens as well. So I think I'm sure you'd have many questions coming now. I'll hand it over to the people here.
Madhu, it's Rajesh here.
Hi, Rajesh. Hello.
Just one analogy in your ksharas. So can we equate this to different particles with different energy states? So then once you change your energy state to go to the next kshara, higher ksharas, and is that make sense, or is there any relevance to that in terms of particles?
So I think So the answer to that would be energy and energies and particles. Everything is part of material creation. Your energy is also part of the material creation. So you're right in that sense. If you look at matter, can you hear me? So if you look at matter,
Yes.
yeah. So if you look at matter, and again, this is also interesting, and we need to deal with this at some point, because there is an Upanishad that talks about tannejati, tattejati, and so on. It says matter is energy, and it moves from energy states of not being a matter, and matter can become energy, is what the Upanishad talks about, which will resonate quite well with the current theory of matter and energy and how they are related with each other. So if you look at the ksharas, one aspect of kshara is the jadas. The jada is the non-sentient things. That includes two things. One is matter and energy. The grossest form of energy is your earth. And the subtlest part of matter, prakriti, is your energy states. So they are interchangeable, is what the Upanishad's view is. And that is exactly what the scientific view also, I believe, is. If Nandesh is there, he can help us with that. But I'm not sure whether if that is what you're implying. In that sense, if you move from one state of energy to the other, that is also a form of destruction, and that would also mean that is a kshara. That's it. Did I make myself clear?
Yeah. So in terms, I mean, what I'm alluding to is the elevation from one energy state to the other. So your positive vibrations and your interaction with other ksharas, could that make you better? So depending on who you interact with, which particles you interact with, so you can elevate you to the next level, and guiding you to your 18-step analogy.
Yeah. So yes, of course, we are all constantly influenced by other jivas around us, and that is the reason why it becomes very important to have the right jivas and satsang around us to make progress. I'm sure they all influence each other. Our energy, say for example, elders, always bless with their hands. And why that is the case is, the elders are supposed to be very knowledgeable, and the energies in the hand can be transmitted and so on. Those kind of views are there in the Upanishads. Absolutely agree with you. They do influence our progress.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Madhu. It's Nandish here.
Madhu, are you in the thing? Your image is frozen.
Yes. Hi, Nandesh.
Hi. Yes, I agree. I think just to add to what Rajesh was saying earlier, so I think energy always flows from if you take it to the literal sense, flows from the higher energy to a lower. So, and also getting it from a higher, that always helps it to grow up. And that's what we do actually when we're working on quantum projects, quantum dot projects and all, which I spoke to you about a while ago. So I agree. I've got some other questions, Madhu. Sort of again, very useful. When you put the flow charts, it helps people like me to understand a little bit better. So thank you for that. At the moment, I mean, there's a lot of sad things and grim things and dark things happening. A particular incident near Aurangabad, so where I originally come from. So you must have heard about the train incidents of where about 16 workers, they were mowed down by a train. They're resting, and I don't know how many people know about this. And also you see the plight of all the migrant workers in India. It's really sort of soul destroying, so to say. What I'm trying to understand is actually sort of a lot of them, they would have been doing the right things in terms of doing the spiritual thinking and also working towards the higher level. But we talk about all the management structure which is there, but does it also mean that the karmic imprint is much more stronger than what they've done in that particular life? Sort of, because I see that incident, and if you see the sequence of events, it feels that if the supreme being, there could have been an intervention at some point in there, but things are happening.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good question, Nandesh. So the way you look at it is, in Gita, as you know, there is this very famous verse, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma karma phalo hetu. Yeah. So there are two jurisdictions. One is Karmanyeva adhikaraste. So that is my jurisdiction as a soul is I do my karma. Okay. Then the next verse is karma pala hetuhu. So who gives the fruits of karmic reactions is the second jurisdiction. Krishna has said very clearly that jurisdiction is mine. Your jurisdiction is your karma. Okay. So we in this jurisdiction, we cannot enter into other jurisdiction. God who is sitting in jurisdiction and try and take away your karmas. Okay. If there is a karmic imprint, that is the Satya Sankalpa. That is the way in which the universe operates. If you have a karmic imprint, you have to go through this. God will not remove your karmic imprints. But what he will do is, he will give you all the facilities for you to play your karmas. So this is where the devatas come in. Say for example, if in my puja room, I have Shiva. The first person I will go to. Okay, I will do puja to Shiva and say, look, please give me good mind. Please stabilize my mind. Please, may I do the right things. Me, because as you know, action can be levels. Manasa, vacha, and then with your hands. So what you think is the first karma that you do. Don't be under the illusion that just by doing actions, you're going to have karmic imprints. What you're thinking also has a karmic imprint. So the first thing you should do is play to Shiva and say, please Shiva, please help us, make sure that we think the right things. Because when you do that, the philosophy there is Shiva will provide you that thing. You would have seen this in your life. Many people have these experiences of doing the right things. So when you do the right things, you have the right karmas. I.e., you may not even have karmas. You might proceed towards what is called nishkama karma, which is what we should be doing. I.e., not to have karmic imprints at all. So to have no karmic imprint means that we follow a nishkama karma yoga. To follow a nishkama karma yoga means that our mind should be in a particular state. And for our mind to be in our particular state, the Vedic philosophy says, go and worship that devata who is the controller of your mind. He will guide you. So even for that, you need the Abhimani devata. So what I was trying to do today is introduce this devata concept, but I think you're absolutely right. We need to have that interactive session on karma and how all the karmic imprints and stuff happens. So as I said, the door is just beginning to open for the soul. Now that the soul has understood various concepts, now how is the soul now going to make that progress? The very first thing for spiritual progress is karma yoga. It is the beginning. It is not the middle. It is not the end. It is only a beginning for the spiritual progress. Then you have your jnanottara karma, then you have your dhyana and bhakti, and then you reach your salvation. So that karma yoga, to practice it in the right spirit, needs this Abhimani Devata worship.
Okay. No, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
I think Madhu and maybe Nandish, I have one thing to say. I think we get very much disturbed by a lot of these events, even the coronavirus and these accidents and everything. But you need to understand that it is a very minuscule incident in the sort of whole sort of the sphere of the universe, galaxy, and everything. I'm also upset by all these things. But I think there are so many things are playing, like the country you live, the system structures, your own mental state, and what is happening, and your own biology, neurobiology. So many things are playing. It's not just one factor. There's a very multifactorial thing that is happening, which leads to these things. So howsoever upset you are, you can't see it as just a single incident and then sort of say, why is this happening? So, I mean, that's my view anyway. So I just thought I'll share it. Yeah.
So I think, yes, you're right. We all need to have compassion for what's going around us, but at the same time also remind ourselves that all these people who have accidents and they lose their bodies and so on, and if we have full faith in the Vedic philosophy, then we realize they have actually not died. The jiva never dies. It just goes and occupies another body, and it goes on and on and on. So once we take that kind of approach, doesn't mean that we should be oblivious to what is happening around us, but to learn the lessons, but also be compassionate to our fellow beings. So that's why, one of the things I have to bring this in. So Madhvacharya, for example, will say, every human being should be Shudra first. Varnashrama creates a lot of controversy. What the word Sudra in Sanskrit essentially means is Sochanat Dravanat. Okay, what that essentially means in proper Sanskrit etymology is have compassion to your fellow human beings. That is the first human quality. Have compassion and serve your fellow beings. That is the fundamental being. Our foundation as human beings is we all are Shudras first. Okay, have compassion for others. Then after that we build based on our own attributes. So having that compassion, I just wish everybody in this world has compassion to others, which is utopian. It ain't going to happen. It is not going to happen. So it is having that understanding probably will guide us in the right direction.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. Thank you.
There's somebody here from Stafford. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you so much about today's enlightenment about Abhimani Devadas, because as you know, in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 7, so I was perturbed. Honestly, I was perturbed, and because it's such a big thing that was thrown in, and to digest that, I've now understood the concept and able to move forward. Yes. And the other thing I want to ask, if one is more inclined, skewed to one Devadas, that Devada or Devadas, does that mean that this is attributed to their past karmic life, or is it a continuum journey?
Yeah, I think I would agree with your latter view that it is a continuum of the journey. So in the same verses in chapter 7, if you look at the second verse, before you come to Devan Yanti verse, before the verses, it is a continuum. It says, yes, they may go to a particular Abhimani Devata, but eventually they'll come to me. Yeah. So we all make our journey. We all start somewhere. So if you have your favorite Abhimani Devata, be it Shiva, Rudra, Shiva, Parvati, Durga, fine. But also remind yourself what the Antaryami Brahmanam of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad has said. What it said is, it is said that inside every sentient being is this Antaryamin. So he is not only in me as a Jiva, he is not only the Abhimani Devata, he is not only in the Jiva, but he is also in the Abhimani Devatas as well. So that is a Vedic view. So you look at it from that perspective. Yes, you do that you ultimately you offer what you are doing to the Antaryamin who is also inside the Abhimani Devata, number one. Number two is there is a higher level of philosophy that you can actually move up to, where there is something called Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Vedas, where every name, every sound, every name of whatever is described in the Vedas actually is the name of the Supreme Being. Say, for example, if I say Rudra, that is the name of the Supreme Being. If I say Ganesha, that is also a name of the Supreme Being. Let me illustrate you with Ganesha, for example, Ganapati. We all know Ganesha comes in Rig Veda. Gananam tu Ganapatihim Havamahe Jeshtarajam Kavim Kavinam. That is how the Rig Veda starts about Ganesha. So Ganapati. Gana means what? Groups. Groups of what? Groups of Kshara and Akshara. So if we have the groups of Kshara and groups of Kshara, who is the Pati of all the Kshara and Akshara that we described? It is that Ganapati. So that Ganapati in the higher sense would actually mean that Supreme Being himself. So that is another level of philosophy, but that is at a later stage. But you are absolutely right. You start off with your Abhimani Devata, but please do it with the understanding what their portfolios are. And then you make your progress.
Thank you. Thank you, Madhu. Thank you very much.
Hi, Madhu.
Janat.
It's Ajit.
Oh, hi.
Sorry.
Ajit,
Sorry. Yeah. Hi, Madhu. Can I just ask you one? I mean, it was interesting. Thank you for a fantastic talk, as usual. It was interesting to hear about Lord Ayyappa, and to think that he doesn't come in the Vedic pantheon. So what happens if you then have him as your Abhimani Devata, or if he doesn't have a portfolio, then if you do follow him, do you then go through the same ladder of spiritual ascending, or do you have to think about an alternative devata to try and take you on your journey?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, Abhijit. I'll try to answer that question. Okay, the first one is the portfolios of the devatas. Yeah, so there are some, as I said, the Vedic concept is, the Vedic pantheon is huge. As I said, there are 9 crores devatas, or possibly 33 crore devatas. The 24 are called Tattva Abhimani devatas. There are very many who are Atattva Abhimani devatas. Their portfolio is not in this Manda creation and so on, but they put the coming to the Ayyappa concept. Now, I really don't have an answer for that, but all that I can say is I have great admiration and regard for people who
Shall I come in for a minute, Madhuji?
Yeah.
As far as I know,
please.
Ayyappa is a child born. The what do you say? Energy born out of Rudra and Shiva and Vishnu. So Vishnu Tattva is the highest Tattva. That's why they have stored the 18 steps to go to Ayyappa, because he is Vishnu himself. Because Vishnu was as Mohini. When he was in a Mohini avatar, when this Amrita Manthan happened. That time Shiva wanted to see him as he is, because he was not present. He wanted to see him in that form. So Mohini comes and it's Vishnu Maya. Vishnu Maya, Shiva couldn't control himself because he was in Vishnu Maya. And the sperm falls, and that is what Ayyappa is. What we understood from this, and it was given to a king to look after him. And so Vishnu's form, plenary expansion means that is 18 steps you said. That's my assumption from what you said just now. I feel he is again as Vishnu himself, Ayyappa. And that's what my husband kept telling in the Bhagavad Gita class when they were confused, our families have been praying Shiva, and how can we not pay? Because people get confused, because whatever Prabhupada has said for the whole universe, for the whole world, because it's easy to pray only Krishna, as far as, one God. Other things, all these Abhimani Devatas and all, everybody can't understand. Only because we have given the Vedic and Upanishad knowledge from God, and you are showing, telling so many things now, it's easy for us to understand, but for them it's difficult. That's why here they have kept one God, Krishna.
Okay, Auntie, thanks. That was very useful actually. We are sort of past our time actually, Madhu, and I think once again a very excellent lecture. People have got questions, more questions. I think they can ask in the group, or we can discuss next week as well. Because I think we have the Prime Minister's speech at 7 o'clock. Many people may want to go and listen to that as well. So I'll probably bring an end to this class. Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to thank. That was an excellent. I just wanted to finish that conversation. That was an excellent exposition of the role of Ayyappa. What I wanted to say is that Shraddha in which people do their vratas for 2 to 3 months is just amazing. It is just amazing, and it just feels like if all of us can do that and follow that direction in our life, our lives will be a lot better. But what has to be said is, if you are a purist, it would be important to get that evidence from the Vedas. It would be very important to get that evidence from the Vedas. And also, now that Mataji was also talking about Prabhupada and so on, I am yet to find Vedic evidence of Chaitanya as an incarnation of Vishnu. It's a very controversial statement to make, but I'm just making this in this forum so that maybe next class we can have an honest intellectual discussion. So I think all our evidence, where we go, we have to go to the Vedas, we have to go to the Upanishads.
Because
Paramahamsa,
Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is supposed to be, same like, because he was always in trance, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And it's only 100 years ago, he had the same, devotional, on his, physically, he showed all these symptoms what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed.
Yeah, that's fine. I think what I'm trying to get at is, we are using something as a foundation to build concepts, and our foundation is the Vedas and the Upanishads is where we have come from. So I think that is one view. I'm not saying that is the only view. That is one view. But I think what we have to do as Hindus is take all the positives of everything. I am the greatest supporter of ISKCON in Nottingham. I love it. I love it as an organization, and we do lots of good activities around this. And similarly from Ayyappas, from a childhood memory, we used to go to all this Sabarimala, bhajans and so on in the local temple. It's amazing. So it is just be wonderful to absorb all these concepts and find our own path and journey.
That is why Swami Vivekananda says, that is why Swami Vivekananda said, combine all the 4 yogas together. It's easier to go to God and understand God,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. Thank you, Sudarshan. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody give a big hand to Madhu, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you, and see you all next week.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Madhu.
Thank you,
Bye.
Madhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.